There comes a time in every life when the road you're on starts to feel like confinement instead of calling. You wake up each day with a quiet ache in your heart, sensing that something is missing, that the ground beneath you no longer feels like the place God meant for you to stay. You may wear a smile, but deep down you know there's a silent cry within you, a cry for direction, a cry for freedom, a cry for a fresh beginning. And hear me clearly, this cry is not your imagination, it is not weakness, and it is not confusion. That cry is God's whisper in your soul. He is saying you need a new path, and I am the one who will lead you there. So many of you listening have walked for years down the same road, repeating the same choices, circling the same mountains, never finding peace in your spirit. You've tried to convince yourself that this is the only way life can be, that this is all you deserve. But what you thought was lost was actually protection. What you thought was the end was really the beginning. Because God knew that if He allowed you to keep walking the same road, you would destroy yourself. But deep within you, a still small voice keeps saying, this is not where you were meant to stay. God has seen every tear you've shed in silence. He has watched every restless night when sleep would not come because your soul was unsettled. And He has heard every unspoken question in your heart. Is there more for me? Is there a better way? Can I ever change direction? And His answer is yes. Not only can you, but you must. Because when God sees that you need a new path, He does not leave you where you are. He calls you to rise, to move, and to step into the destiny He designed for you long before you took your first breath. You see, the danger of staying on the wrong path is not just wasted time, it is wasted life. And life is too short, too precious, too sacred to be squandered on roads that lead nowhere. Many of you are clinging to a path that God has already told you to leave. You are holding on to relationships that poison your spirit, to habits that chain your future, to fears that paralyze your potential. And as long as you keep walking down the road of compromise, defeat, and disobedience, you will never taste the fullness of what God created you to experience. That is why He shakes your world. That is why He disturbs your comfort. That is why He will not let you feel settled in a place that was never meant to be your home. Because God loves you too much to let you die on the wrong path. And some of you know exactly what I mean. You thought you were losing everything when that door closed, when that person left, when that plan failed. So He disrupted your direction, not to punish you, but to prepare you, not to break you, but to build you, not to push you down, but to lift you up. God knew you needed a new path, and He is still calling you to follow it today. But here is the question, will you listen? Because the tragedy of life is not that God refuses to lead us. The tragedy is that we refuse to follow. God has been speaking to you in ways you cannot deny, through circumstances, through challenges, through the deep unrest in your heart. He has been saying, this road ends here. It is time to turn. But too many of us close our ears to His voice because we are afraid of the unknown. We cling to what is familiar. Even when it is killing us, we would rather walk in circles on a broken road than step out in the uncertainty of faith. But hear me tonight. The path God calls you to may be unfamiliar, but it is never unsafe. It may feel uncertain, but it is never unwise. You may be busy, but you're not fruitful. And God did not create you just to exist. He created you to live with purpose, to walk in His light, to become all that He designed you to be. That is why He is calling you to a new path, because your old one cannot carry the weight of the future He has prepared for you. I want you to think about this. Every great turning point in life begins with a moment of decision. You can't walk into a new destiny while clinging to an old direction. You can't step into tomorrow if you are chained to yesterday. God is not asking you to understand everything about the new path. He is asking you to trust Him enough to take the first step. That's where faith comes alive. Faith is not waiting until every question is answered. Faith is moving when God says move, even if the road ahead is hidden in shadows. If God calls you to it, He has already gone before you. And every step you take in obedience will lead you closer to the life He intended. Do not confuse comfort with calling. Do not confuse survival with success. You may be surviving on the path you're on, but you're not thriving. You may be moving, but you're not advancing. Some of you listening right now are at a crossroads. You know the road you've been walking is not leading you anywhere. You know deep inside that the longer you stay on this path, the more you lose time, joy, peace, hope, and yet fear has kept you stuck. But let me tell you this, the only thing more dangerous than stepping into the unknown is refusing to step at all. Stagnation is death. Hesitation is defeat. But obedience is life. If you want to see the power of God in your life, you must have the courage to step into the path He is showing you. Think of how many times you have asked God for change, for a breakthrough, for a new beginning. And now that He is answering, now that He has opened the door, will you hesitate or will you step into it with boldness? Because when you take that first step, God will meet you there. And with every step you take in trust, the path will become clearer, stronger, and brighter. Because the path may not be easy, but it will be worth it. The road may not be smooth, but it will be sacred. God never promised that the path would be without trials. He promised that He would be with you in every trial. And I would rather walk a difficult road with God than walk an easy road without Him. This is the hour to decide. This is the moment to choose. The longer you wait, the heavier your chains will become. But the moment you turn your feet toward the path God has set before you, the moment you surrender your way for His way, the moment you stop resisting and start following, you will discover a freedom you have never known. Because the will of God will never lead you where His power cannot sustain you. When God begins to stir in your life, it is never without purpose. The uneasiness you feel, the dissatisfaction with the path you're on, the longing for something more, these are not accidents. They are divine signals. God is awakening you to the truth that the road you have been walking cannot take you where He desires to lead you. Sometimes He allows your path to dry up so you will stop drinking from broken wells and turn your face toward the living water that never runs out. And I say to you with all the authority of conviction, when God calls you to a new path, it is not to deprive you, it is to deliver you. It is not to strip you of joy, but to restore it. It is not to destroy your plans, but to replace them with His greater plan. The path you cling to now may be comfortable, but it is also confining. God does not call you to comfort. He calls you to transformation. And transformation requires change. It requires courage. It requires stepping into the unknown, knowing only that God Himself goes before you. There are some listening right now who have mistaken delay for denial. You thought because God didn't move when you wanted Him to, He would never move at all. You looked at the closed doors and you assumed heaven had turned its back on you. But let me declare to you tonight, God's silence is not his absence. His timing is not your timing. And just because he allowed you to walk a season of wilderness does not mean he has abandoned you. Sometimes God lets you taste emptiness so that you will hunger for the fullness only he can provide. What you call delay, God calls preparation. What you see as wasted years, God sees as training ground. And the moment he knows you are ready, he will open before you a new path that no force on earth can shut. But do not think for a moment that the new path will be without challenge. Every divine path demands sacrifice. Every step closer to God's plan pulls you farther away from what is familiar, what is easy, what is safe. And many fail to walk the new path because they cannot let go of the old one. They want the blessing without the breaking, the promise without the pruning, the destiny without the discipline. But hear me clearly. God will not build your future on foundations that cannot carry the weight of his glory. If you refuse to release what is killing you, you cannot receive what will heal you. If you cling to the chains of yesterday, you cannot embrace the freedom of tomorrow. A new path requires a new surrender. And when you lay down your will for the will of God, when you release your grip on what you thought you needed, then and only then will you have hands open enough to receive what he has prepared for you. I tell you with passion and certainty, there are blessings God is waiting to give you that cannot come until you move. He blesses movement. The path of destiny is not walked by the hesitant, it is walked by the obedient. And the longer you delay, the more you forfeit. But the moment you obey, the moment you turn your feet toward his way, you unleash favor and provision that will follow you all the days of your life. And let me remind you, the path God calls you to is not just about you. It is bigger than your comfort, bigger than your convenience, bigger than your personal dreams. When God redirects your life, he does so because your story is meant to touch others. Your journey is meant to shine light for those still wandering in darkness. If you remain stuck where you are, countless others will remain stuck as well. But when you step into the new path, when you follow the call of God with boldness, your courage becomes a testimony. Your obedience becomes an invitation for others to rise. Your faith becomes a spark that ignites faith in the hearts of those watching you. This is why the path you take matters, because your life is not a private matter. It is a public witness. And when you walk in alignment with God, you become a living example of his power, his wisdom, and his guidance. There are doors he cannot open until you shift your direction. There are answers he will not reveal until you step out of the comfort of the familiar and walk the road of faith. Too many of you are praying for God to change your situation while refusing to change your position. You want him to bless you while you remain in the same place, making the same decisions, walking the same road. But God does not bless stagnation. The world is filled with voices telling you to stay where you are, to accept what is, to settle for less than God's best. Fear tells you, don't move, you might fail. Doubt whispers, stay here. It's safer. The enemy of your soul will always try to convince you that change is costly, that risk is too dangerous, that obedience is too difficult. But I tell you this, the only true danger is ignoring the voice of God. For the moment you silence his leading, you silence your own destiny. The moment you turn your back on his call, you turn your back on the very life you were created to live. When God calls you to a new path, He is not merely changing your scenery. He is reshaping your soul. He is breaking cycles that have held you captive for years. He is pulling you out of the places where your faith has grown stagnant and your heart has grown weary. Too many of you have been walking in circles, repeating the same struggles, carrying the same burdens, believing the lie that this is all there is. But God did not form you from the dust of the earth to live a life of defeat. He did not breathe His Spirit into you so you could settle in mediocrity. He did not design you to be chained to failure, regret, and fear. God placed greatness inside you, and He will not allow you to waste it on a path that leads nowhere. That is why the disruption has come. That is why you feel the stirring in your heart. It is the sign that God is shifting you, pushing you, urging you to step into the road that will unlock what He has always known was inside you. Do not think the path of God is reserved only for the strong, the wealthy, the educated, or the influential. No, His call comes to the weary, the broken, the overlooked, the forgotten. It comes to the man who thinks his failures have disqualified him. It comes to the woman who believes her pain has silenced her potential. It comes to the youth who feels invisible in a world that never seems to notice. God's call is not based on who you are. It is based on who He is. And when He sets a new path before you, He equips you for every step of it. He strengthens the weak. He lifts the fallen. He heals the wounded. He renews the weary. The path may stretch you beyond what you think you can handle. But that is how God proves that His power is greater than your limitations. The danger for many of you is that you keep looking back while God is calling you forward. You keep measuring your future by the failures of your past. But hear me. Your past was a lesson, not a sentence. Your mistakes were chapters, not the whole story. And the God who knows the beginning and the end has written more for you than the pain you've endured. Do not chain yourself to what God has already released you from. When He calls you to a new path, He is not asking you to drag your history with you. He is asking you to walk free. If you continue to hold on to what was, you will never step into what can be. The new path requires you to let go of the weight that slows you down and trust that God knows how to carry what you cannot. It is about obeying God. And when you obey Him, the world may not understand, but heaven will rejoice. The beauty of God's path is that it often begins in the shadows, but ends in the light. At first, you may not see where you are going, but if you trust God enough to take the first step, He will guide the second. And with each step, clarity will grow, strength will rise, and peace will settle in your heart. God does not promise to show you the entire road at once, but He promises to be with you for every step of it. And I would rather walk one step at a time with God than run 1,000 miles without Him. Or will you listen to the voice of God who formed you with purpose? Every time you choose His voice over theirs, every time you walk by conviction instead of fear, you silence the power of those who want to keep you bound. This path is not about pleasing people. And let me tell you something. There will be resistance. Not everyone will understand the path God places before you. Some will mock you. Some will doubt. Some will even try to pull you back into the life you are leaving behind. But you must decide whose voice you will follow. Will you listen to the opinions of people who do not hold your destiny? You will see the dangers you escaped, the traps you avoided, the burdens you no longer carry. You will see that the pain of leaving was nothing compared to the joy of arriving. And you will say with certainty, God knew what I could not see at all. He knew I needed this new path. That is the testimony waiting for you if you will only trust Him now. And understand this. God's path is never only about reaching a destination. It is about becoming who He created you to be along the way. The road He sets before you will stretch your faith. It will test your endurance. It will refine your character. But with each trial comes transformation. With each challenge comes growth. With each step of surrender comes a deeper connection with the one who leads you. There will come a moment when you look back on the path you left behind and realize why God pulled you out. There comes a time in life when God will not allow you to remain where you are any longer. The new path is not just about where you are going. It is about who you are becoming in the process. Some of you have been praying for a sign, asking God to show you if it's really time to move. Let me tell you, the unrest in your spirit is the sign. The dissatisfaction that will not leave you is the sign. The closed doors that once were open are the sign. God does not waste His children's pain. If He is making you uncomfortable, it is because He knows comfort has kept you captive too long. He is shaking you loose from what no longer serves your destiny so that you can rise into the life He has prepared. Do not ignore the signs. Do not silence the voice. Do not harden your heart. God knows you need a new path, and He is calling you to walk it today. That opportunity that slipped through your fingers was not punishment. Do not mistake God's redirection for rejection. Too many times we cry over what has ended, not realizing that the end was God's kindness in disguise. He will disturb the ground beneath your feet, shake the walls around your comfort, and make it impossible for you to stay in a place that no longer carries His blessing. This is not because He seeks to harm you, but because He knows that if you linger too long in the wrong place, you will miss the purpose for which you were created. God's mercy does not always come as ease. It often comes as disruption. He will close doors you thought you needed. He will remove people you thought would stay forever. He will dismantle plans you built with your own strength, all so that you will finally lift your eyes from the path of your own making and see the path of His choosing. It was redirection. When God takes something from your hands, it is only because He has something greater He is preparing to place in them. You may not understand it now, but when you look back one day, you will see that every detour, every delay, every disappointment was part of the map leading you to the path you were meant to walk all along. And let me tell you this, the new path God sets before you will always call you higher. It will demand more faith, more obedience, more trust. God does not lead you into the familiar. He leads you into the future. And the future He calls you to will stretch you beyond the limits you have placed on yourself. It will feel bigger than you, greater than your abilities, stronger than your resources. That is the point. Because if you could accomplish it on your own, you would not need God. But when the path requires more than you can carry, when the road demands more than you can give, when the journey seems impossible in your own strength, that is when God's power becomes undeniable. He does not call you to what is possible. He calls you to what is impossible without Him. Some of you have been clinging to your own plans as though your life belongs to you. You map out your future. You script your story. It was protection. That relationship that crumbled was not abandonment. It was preparation. That dream that shattered was not defeat. You build your dreams on the foundation of your own understanding. But then, when those plans collapse, you wonder why the ground shakes beneath you. Hear me. Your life was never yours to control. You were formed by the hands of God, and only He holds the blueprint of your destiny. Until you surrender your plans to Him, you will always feel the tension of walking a path that does not align with His design. The safest place you can be is not on the road of your choosing, but on the road of God's calling. And yet, I must warn you, walking God's path will require courage. It is not the easy way. It is the right way. It is not the path of the majority. It is the path of the faithful. There will be moments when doubt will scream louder than faith, when fear will try to chain your feet, when the voices around you will question your every move. But you must silence those voices with the truth that God does not lead His children into failure. If He has called you, He has equipped you. If He has led you, He has prepared the way before you. If He has stirred your heart, then the very fact that you feel His pull is proof that He has already made provision for your journey. Think of the many men and women who settled for less because they were too afraid to step out in faith. They spent their lives looking over their shoulders, asking what if, never realizing that the path of fear is far more dangerous than the path of faith. Even when it feels uncertain, even when you cannot see the next step, He has already prepared what you need. On His path, there will be provision where you least expected. There will be strength you didn't know you had. There will be doors you could not have opened on your own. There will be favor that no man can explain. God's path is not always the shortest, but it is always the shest. It may not be the smoothest, but it is always the strongest. It may not be the path you planned, but it is always the path you need. There are seasons in your life when God will make the ground beneath you tremble, just enough so you can no longer ignore His call. The things that once satisfied you begin to feel empty. The places that once felt secure begin to feel confining, and the dreams you once pursued begin to feel shallow. And that is not coincidence. For fear destroys dreams before they can breathe, silences voices before they can speak, and buries destinies before they can bloom. But faith, the path God invites you to walk, awakens a life unlike any other. A life marked by courage. A life marked by peace. A life sustained by the strength that comes from walking hand in hand with God. Do not waste your years walking in circles. Do not build your foundation on shifting sand. Do not let the praise of people keep you bound to a path God has already asked you to leave. Every breath you draw reminds you that time is moving. With each passing second, the chance to step into God's plan grows nearer or slips further away. You cannot stay still. You cannot wait for everything to be perfect. The perfect time is now, because this is the moment God is calling you. And here is what I want you to understand. God's path will never lead you in emptiness. It is divine awakening. God is telling you where you are is no longer where you belong. He is stirring your heart because He refuses to let you waste the treasure He placed inside of you on a path that does not honor Him. You may not realize it now, but that dissatisfaction you feel is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the voice of God saying, "Rise, because I have more for you." And make no mistake, God will never call you to remain in the valley of small living. when he has prepared the mountaintop of purpose. Too often we shrink ourselves to fit into places that cannot contain us. We lower our expectations. We silence our voice. We settle for less, thinking it is humility. But humility is not denying what God has placed within you. Humility is surrendering it to him so that he may use it fully. And when you surrender, he lifts you from the roads of compromise and sets you upon the path of destiny. That path is not just about what you achieve. It is about who you become. It is about walking in alignment with the one who formed you. Living with a heart that reflects his will and carrying yourself with the confidence that comes not from your strength, but from his presence. Too many people ask, what if I fail if I take this path? But I ask you, what if you succeed? What if the very thing you are afraid to try is the very thing God has been preparing you for all along? What if the path you are avoiding holds the breakthrough you have been praying for? What if the road you fear to take is the road where you finally find peace? Failure is not stepping onto God's path and stumbling. Failure is refusing to walk it because every step you take in obedience, even if it feels small, is victory in the eyes of God. Some of you are waiting for God to show you every detail before you move. You want the whole map, the full picture, the guarantee of success. But God rarely works that way. He does not give you the entire plan, because if you saw it all, you would not need faith. Instead, he gives you enough light for the next step. And when you take that step, he gives you the next. This is how he teaches you to trust him, not with your eyes, but with your heart. For the path is not meant to be seen all at once. It is meant to be walked with him day by day. I must speak plainly to you. There will be sacrifices on this path. You cannot walk into the life God has prepared for you while clinging to the habits, the fears, the relationships, or the comforts that belong to your old road. The new path demands release. It demands courage to leave behind what no longer serves you. It demands trust to step away from the approval of people and walk in the approval of God alone. And though it may feel like loss at first, you will soon discover that everything you surrendered was only making space for what God was waiting to give you. And here is a truth you must never forget. God's path is not only about your personal fulfillment. It is about your impact. It is about the lives he intends to touch through your obedience. Your decision to step into the new path may become the reason someone else finds their way. Your courage to rise may become the strength that helps another stand. Your faith to move forward may be the testimony that awakens faith in someone else. You are not walking this road alone, for your life is connected to countless others. And when you obey God, you create ripples that reach farther than you can ever imagine. That is his mercy. That is his love. That is his way of making sure you do not settle in places beneath your calling. The truth is, you already know the answer. Deep inside, you know the road you are walking now is not enough. Deep inside, you know God has been whispering to you, tugging at you, calling you. Do not ignore him any longer. Do not silence his voice with busyness, with excuses, with fear. This is your moment. This is your crossroads. And God is standing before you saying, Choose the path of life. Choose the path of purpose. Choose the path of prepared. There are moments in life when the ground beneath your feet feels unsteady. You may be asking, but how will I know if this is really God's path? Listen closely. You will know by the peace that settles in your heart, even when the road ahead is uncertain. You will know by the way doors begin to align, not by accident, but by divine orchestration. You will know by the way the wrong people drift away and the right people appear at the right time. And most of all, you will know because no matter how fearful your mind feels, your spirit will not let you go back. God will keep stirring you, pressing you, pushing you until you step forward. When the road you have walked for so long begins to fade into confusion, and when the doors you once thought would open for you remain stubbornly closed, and in those moments you may ask yourself, why is this happening? Why is my way blocked? But let me tell you something with all the strength and conviction of my soul. God is not closing doors to hurt you. He's closing them to lead you. He is not ending seasons to abandon you. He is ending them because he knows the road you are on cannot take you to the destiny he has prepared. God knows you need a new path. And sometimes the hardest thing for us as human beings is to release what we have clung to for years. To let go of the familiar, to leave behind the comfort of routines that no longer serve us. We would rather remain in a place of struggle than step into the unknown. But God calls you beyond your fear. God calls you into a future that your mind cannot yet imagine. He sees the traps you cannot see. He knows the dangers that lie ahead if you continue as you are. He knows the burden of the chains that you pretend don't weigh you down. And because he loves you, he disrupts your plans so he can put you on his path. Do not despise the disruptions of God. Many of you listening right now have felt the stirring inside your heart. You sense it in the quiet hours when you cannot sleep, when you wonder why nothing feels right anymore. They are not punishments, they are redirections. When you feel stripped of what you thought was secure, it is God taking you out of false security and planning your life upon the solid ground of his will. When opportunities vanish, it is because God has greater ones that require you to walk differently, to think differently, to live differently. You cannot live your future on yesterday's habits. You cannot walk into the destiny God has written for you if you insist on holding to the path you carve for yourself. That dissatisfaction is not a curse. That inner voice is God whispering, it is time for something new. It is time for you to rise. It is time for you to walk the path I designed for you before the foundation of the earth. And hear me clearly, God's path is never a path of confusion. It may feel uncertain to you, but it is ordered by his wisdom. It may look narrow to you, but it is wide enough for his blessings to overflow. It may appear steep, but he equips you with the strength to climb. He does not lead you where his presence cannot sustain you. If he shifts your direction, it is because his hand is already waiting at the end of the road to crown your obedience with favor. When your spirit aches for something greater than your daily routine, that restlessness is not an accident, but to walk the new path God has for you, you must be willing to surrender the old one. You cannot cling to what is broken and expect God to give you wholeness. You cannot clutch the past while asking him for a new future. You must decide that his way is higher than your way, his wisdom greater than your wisdom, his plan more perfect than all your striving. The question is not whether God is willing to lead you. He is. The question is whether you are willing to follow when He calls you to step out. Do not let fear paralyze you at the edge of your breakthrough. Too many lives remain stuck because people would rather stay in a valley they know than climb a mountain they do not. But if God says climb, then climb. If God says walk, then walk. If God says let go, then let go. Because the same God who commands you to move will carry you as you go. He will not call you to a new path and abandon you halfway. He is the God who finishes what He begins. Think of the countless stories throughout history of men and women who refused to settle for the familiar. When God stirred their hearts, they were not extraordinary because of their own strength. They were extraordinary because they trusted the hand of God enough to step into the unknown. And the same God who ordered their steps is still ordering steps today. The same God who lifted them from obscurity can lift you. The same God who redirected their lives can redirect you, if you will only listen and obey. Let me speak to the heart that feels weary tonight. You have tried. You have fought. You have given all you had. And still the path you walk has led to emptiness. But hear this with clarity. God's path requires trust. It requires faith when your eyes cannot see. It requires surrender when your hands want to hold on. It requires patience when your heart is desperate for speed. Too often, we miss the blessing of God's new path because we want to run ahead of His timing. But the God who knows the way also knows the when. If He holds you back for a season, it is because the ground ahead is not ready yet. If He pauses your steps, it is because He is clearing obstacles you cannot see. Trust His delay as much as His direction, because both are part of His design. And I want you to understand something deeper. When God puts you on a new path, He is not just changing your direction. God sees your tears. He has watched your struggle. And He whispers to your soul, this is not the end. This is not your final chapter. I have something greater for you. God never brings you out to leave you empty. If He is pulling you away from something, it is because He has something richer, deeper, more fulfilling prepared. Lay down your need for control and lift your eyes to the one who sees the end from the beginning. He is changing you. He is shaping your character, purifying your heart, deepening your faith, and strengthening your resolve. The path is not only about where you are going, but who you are becoming as you walk it. God is less concerned with how quickly you arrive, and more concerned with how faithfully you follow. So I say to you with urgency, do not fight the hand of God when He calls you to a new path. Do not cling to what is familiar when the Almighty has written a future beyond your imagination. Lay down your fear. Lay down your doubt. He knows the storms you will face and has already prepared the shelter. He knows the mountains you will climb and has already placed strength within you. He is asking you to trust Him enough to follow. He is asking you to believe that His way, though it may cost you comfort, will give you purpose. He is asking you to surrender the small plans you hold so He can replace them with His great design. And if you will dare to walk with Him, you will discover that His path is not only new, it is the path that leads to life. And so I leave you with this truth burning in your heart. God is calling you to rise from the dust of where you've been and to walk boldly into where He is leading. Do not look back at what was lost. Do not cling to what has ended, and do not mourn the doors that have closed. Lift your eyes to the God who knows you better than you know yourself, to the one who sees the full design of your life when all you can see is a single step. His hand is steady, His plan is perfect, and His love is unshakable. This moment is no coincidence. He knows the deserts you will cross and has already provided living water. God knows you need a new path, and He is not asking you to create it by your own wisdom. More peace, more purpose, more life. Walk boldly into this new beginning. You are not listening to these words by accident. God has stepped into your journey to whisper that a new season has begun. It's time to place your full trust in Him, to release the path you've been building on your own, and to follow the one He designed for you. It may challenge you, it may stretch your faith, but it will never leave you empty, because God never calls His children into less, only into more. Walk with faith. Walk with a heart fully surrendered to Him, trusting that His strength will carry you, His wisdom will direct you, and His goodness will overflow along the way. For when you walk in God's divine path, you don't just discover direction, you discover the very heartbeat of life itself. There will be moments in life when you reach the edge of your own strength and feel as though you cannot take another step. You see the burdens pressing on your shoulders, the chains gripping your thoughts, the walls blocking your path, and you whisper to yourself, "This is it. This is as far as I can go. This is all I will ever be." But hear this truth spoken into your spirit today. The limits you see, the walls surrounding you, the ceilings you think cannot be broken, none of them were placed there by God. They are born from fear, from doubt, from the boundaries you have unknowingly built within yourself. And with the power of faith, I tell you this, if you will surrender those limits to Him, God will shatter every barrier you once believed could never fall. You were not created for a life of defeat. You were not born to crawl in the dust of despair. You were fashioned by the very hands of God, with potential so vast, with strength so great, with possibilities so endless that no human eye can measure it. Yet the tragedy of life is that men and women live small, they live confined. Not because God has made them so, but because they have placed shackles upon their own minds and souls. God has never once said you cannot rise. God has never once said you cannot dream. God has never once said you cannot. Those are words we speak to ourselves when fear whispers louder than faith. And yet when you turn your eyes toward God, when you surrender those limits you have placed upon yourself, then and only then will you discover that the very chains you thought unbreakable were only illusions of your doubt. I have met people who live defeated before the battle even begins. They walk into opportunities with their heads bowed low, already convinced they will fail. They approach dreams as though they are enemies, afraid of disappointment, afraid of rejection, afraid of falling. But hear me, my friend, God never intended for His children to live in fear. Fear is the prison of your mind. Fear is the greatest thief of destiny. Fear will convince you to stay in the valley when God has prepared the mountain. Fear will whisper, "This is too much for you," when God is declaring, "With me, nothing is too much for you." Do not let fear put a limit where God has placed no boundary. The human mind is powerful, but without faith in God it becomes a cage. How many times have you told yourself, I am not good enough? How many times have you looked in the mirror and said, I do not have what it takes? How many times have you silenced your own dream before the world even had the chance to hear it? That is not humility. That is unbelief, and unbelief is a greater enemy than any obstacle in your way. Because when you do not believe, you rob yourself of the very power God placed in you from the beginning. God never created you to speak defeat over your own life. God created you to rise with strength, to move with courage, to believe with faith, and to walk knowing that every limitation you feel is no match for His power. And there are people listening right now who have buried their dreams. The greatest battles you will ever fight are not outside of you, but inside of you. The war of the mind is where destinies are won or lost. The enemy of your soul does not have to break down your door to stop you. He only needs to whisper lies into your thoughts and let you do the rest. When you believe you cannot, you have already surrendered the fight. But when you believe that God can, that God will, that God is able, then no force in heaven or on earth can keep you bound. God removes limits, not by changing who you are, but by reminding you of who He already made you to be. Every time you tell yourself, I cannot, you are speaking words that chain your spirit. But when you declare with God, I can, you release power into your life that no chain can hold. Some of you have been living under ceilings of your own construction. You have told yourself you cannot go higher, you cannot do better, you cannot reach further. But those ceilings are not real, they are shadows of your doubt. God is saying to you today, lift up your head, tear down the ceiling. You once had a vision, a fire inside of you, a passion that made your heart race and your spirit leap. But over time, the voice of doubt grew louder. The words of others weighed heavier, and the mistakes of your past built walls around you. And now you live with the ashes of what once burned brightly. But hear this truth. God does not bury dreams. God resurrects them. What you thought was over, what you thought could never live again, what you thought was gone forever, God can breathe life into it once more. Do not let your own voice of doubt become stronger than God's voice of promise. He is greater than your weakness, greater than your past, greater than every excuse you have ever used to chain yourself down. Walk in faith. Step into the wide open space I have prepared for you. Think of the mighty river that flows from the mountain. No rock, no bend, no obstacle can hold it back. It may be slowed, it may change direction, but it will always find its way forward. That is what a life with God is meant to be. You may encounter setbacks, you may face detours, you may stumble and fall. But when you trust in God, your destiny will keep flowing. The river does not stop because of a stone, and you must not stop because of a challenge. Do not let a moment of failure define the rest of your life. God has greater waters ahead, and He will remove every rock, every barrier, every wall, if only you will keep moving in faith. I speak to those who have been told by others, you cannot do it. Let me tell you something. God does not consult the opinions of men when He creates your destiny. God does not need the approval of your critics to bless your life. God does not measure your worth by the standards of society. When people say you are not enough, God says, I am enough through you. When people close doors in your face, God says, I will open doors no man can shut. When people place limits upon you, God declares, "My power has no limit, and I will work through you if you trust me." Stop allowing the voices of man to set the boundaries of your life when the voice of God is calling you beyond them. Some of you are chained not by what people said, but by what you said to yourself. You look at your failures and you declare, "I will never rise again." You look at your weakness and you declare, "I am too broken to be whole." You look at your scars and you declare, "I am unworthy of the victory." But those are lies born from despair. You are not too broken. You are not too far gone. You are not too weak. You are the very one God desires to lift up, to strengthen, to transform. Faith is the bridge that takes you from where you are to where God has destined you to be. If you will surrender those self-imposed limits, if you will lay them down before God, He will show you what strength really looks like. Do you not know that God delights in using the ordinary to accomplish the extraordinary? Do you not know that God takes the weakest vessels and fills them with the greatest power? Do you not know that God chooses those whom the world rejects so that His greatness may be revealed? Do not disqualify yourself when God has already qualified you. Do not silence your own voice when God has given you words to speak. Do not shrink back in fear when God has called you to stand in courage. Every time you doubt yourself, you are doubting the God who made you. And I tell you, there is no greater insult to the one who created you than for you to say, "I cannot," when He is saying through me, "You can." Your doubt does not make God smaller, but it makes your vision smaller. Oh, your unbelief does not reduce His power, but it reduces your ability to see His power at work. Faith is the key that unlocks the prison of your mind. Faith is the light that shatters the darkness of your limitations. You have been living as though your limits are stronger than God's promises. But let me remind you, God's power has no limit. His wisdom has no limit. His mercy has no limit. His ability to transform your life has no limit. And when you place your faith in Him, He removes every limit you have placed upon yourself. He lifts you higher than you ever believed you could rise. He strengthens you beyond what you thought you could endure. He carries you further than you ever imagined you could go. Your life is not over. Your best days are not behind you. Your greatest victories are not in the past. With God, the horizon is always brighter. The future is always greater. The possibilities are always endless. But you must take off the chains of doubt. You must tear down the walls of fear. You must remove the ceiling of unbelief. Because as long as you keep them, you will live confined. But the moment you let them go, the moment you trust God fully, the moment you step beyond the prison of your own mind, that is the moment God begins to reveal what He has been waiting to show you all along. Let me tell you something that may shake you at the core. Most of the limitations in your life are not put there by God nor by other people, but by yourself. You set the boundaries of your thinking. You draw the lines around your dreams, and you decide how far you are willing to go. But hear me, when you come to God in surrender, He will not honor the small cage you built for yourself. He will break it apart. God does not shrink His greatness to fit your fear. He expands your vision to fit His power. What you see as impossible is not even a challenge for him. The ceiling you placed above your head is nothing but dust in his hands. When you finally stop saying, I cannot, and start saying with God, I will, then you begin to walk in the freedom. There is a lie that many carry silently in their hearts. The lie that they are too weak, too flawed, too ordinary to do anything extraordinary. But who told you that? Did God say you were too weak? No, he said he is your strength. Did God say you were too flawed? He said his mercy covers every flaw. Did God say you were too ordinary? No, he said you are wonderfully made, chosen and destined for more than you can see. The problem is not what God has declared. The problem is what you have chosen to believe. And as long as you believe the lie of your own limits, you will never live in the truth of God's greatness. I speak to hearts that are weary, to minds that are heavy, to spirits that feel confined by the weight of their own unbelief. Do not mistake your weariness for weakness. Do not mistake your struggle for defeat. That is a lie born from despair. Where you began is not where you must end. The valley you came from does not determine the mountain you can climb. The wounds of your past do not determine the victories of your future. God delights in lifting the lowly, in raising the broken, in strengthening the weary. If you believe your circumstances are stronger than your destiny, you have believed wrongly. God is greater than your beginnings. He is greater than your pain. He is greater than the chains of your past. And he will remove every limit if you dare to trust him beyond what your eyes can see. Too often we measure ourselves against others and call it truth. We look at their success and say, I can never be like that. We look at their strength and say, I am too weak. We look at their blessing and say, God has forgotten me. But God never asked you to measure yourself against anyone else. Your journey is your own. Your calling is your own. Your purpose is your own. Comparison is another limit you place upon yourself, and it will rob you of joy, rob you of peace, and rob you of destiny. When you look at others, you see what God has done for them. But when you look to God, you will see what he can do for you. Stop comparing, stop shrinking, stop doubting. God has given you a life to live, a purpose to fulfill, a destiny to walk in. And when you trust him, no comparison can diminish it. Hear me when I say you will never outdream God. No matter how great your vision, no matter how vast your hope, no matter how bold your desire, God's plan is always greater. He sees further than you see. He knows more than you know. He is able to do beyond what your mind can comprehend. And so if your dreams are limited, it is not because God gave you small dreams. It is because you stopped yourself from dreaming bigger. Open your heart again. But I say this with all authority. Failure is not final when God is involved. Failure is a lesson, not a sentence. Failure is a stepping stone, not a grade. Do not let one chapter define the whole book of your life. God has written a story for you that is filled with redemption, filled with triumph, filled with promise, but you will never know its power if you allow the ink of doubt to blot out the words of hope. Others among you are trapped by the voices of your past. Maybe you were told you would never succeed. Maybe you were told you were not enough. Maybe you were told to stay in your place, to shrink, to settle, to live quietly in the shadow of others, and you believed those voices because they seemed louder than your own. But let me tell you, the voice of God is louder still. He calls you out of the shadows. He calls you into the light. He calls you to walk boldly, to live freely, to rise courageously. And when God calls you, no human voice has the authority to silence you. Do not let the memory of what people said limit the reality of what God is saying right now. There are those who believe their circumstances are the limits of their life. They say, I was born in poverty, so I must stay in poverty. I was raised in hardship, so I must remain in hardship. I was abandoned, so I must always live in loneliness. Do not mistake your delay for denial. God has not turned away from you. He has not abandoned you in your struggle. He has not left you in the shadows of your doubts. He is waiting for you to lift your head, to release your grip on the chains you hold, and to believe that His power is greater than your restraint. God cannot be limited, but He allows you the freedom to limit yourself. And the moment you let go of those limits, you will see that His plan for your life has always been far greater than your imagination. Some of you are living in the aftermath of failure. You tried once and you fell. You stepped out and you stumbled. You reached for more and you came back empty-handed. And now you have convinced yourself that failure is final, that your story is finished, that you must lie small because greatness is not for you. Dare to believe again. Dare to hope again. Dare to step out in faith, not because you are strong enough, but because God, every day you wake up, you face a choice. Will you live bound by fear, or will you live free in faith? Will you believe the lies of your limits, or will you believe the truth of God's power? Will you shrink back into the cage of your own making, or will you step forward into the wide open field of God's promise? The choice is yours, but the power is God's. And when you choose faith, when you choose courage, when you choose to believe that God is greater than your limits, then nothing can stop you. Do not think for a moment that God desires for you to live a life of mediocrity, trapped in chains of doubt and fear. No, God desires abundance, fullness, freedom, and victory for His people. He is not glorified in your defeat. He is glorified in your triumph. He is not magnified in your despair. He is magnified when you rise from despair into hope. He is not honored when you hide in fear. He is honored when you walk boldly in faith. Do not dishonor the greatness of God by living small. Live wide. Live free. And when the storms come, and they will come, do not see them as proof of your limits. See them as opportunities for God to show His power. The storm is not there to drown you. It is there to reveal that the God within you is greater than the storm around you. The mountain is not there to block you. It is there to reveal that with God you can climb higher than you ever imagined. The challenge is not there to defeat you. It is there to prove that the strength of God in you cannot be broken. What you see as a limit, God sees as an opportunity. What you see as an end, God sees as a beginning. There comes a time when you must look in the mirror of your soul and ask yourself, who told me I could not? Who told you that the dream in your heart was too great? Who told you that your weakness was permanent? Who told you that your failures had to define you forever? It was not God. God never whispered defeat into your ear. God never stamped impossibility across your destiny. Those words came from your fear, your doubt, and your wounds, Kron. But the voice of God is different. The voice of God calls you upward, outward, forward. The voice of God tells you that there is no chain too strong, No wall too high, no burden too heavy, no obstacle too great. The voice of God says, trust me and I will remove every limit you placed upon yourself. When you walk with God, you are walking with the author of possibility. They are walls built of your own words, your own thoughts, your own hesitation. And when you align your vision with His, when you stop looking at yourself through the eyes of doubt and start seeing yourself through the eyes of God, then you will understand that the limits you believed were permanent were nothing but shadows ready to be scattered by His light. Too many live like prisoners. Though the door of the cell has been left wide open, they sit in the corner, bound by invisible chains, convinced that they cannot leave. When all the while God is calling, step out. The door is open. The walls around you may look real, but they are walls built of fear, not of stone. What you call the end, He calls the beginning. What you call broken, He calls a masterpiece in progress. What you call weakness, He calls an opportunity for strength to be revealed. God does not look at you through the eyes of man. Man sees your flaws, but God sees your potential. Man sees your limits, but God sees your future. Man sees your failure, but God sees the victory He has already prepared for you. Tear them down with faith. Tear them down with courage. Tear them down with the truth that God has made you for more. Stop living as though the prison of your mind is stronger than the power of the Almighty. Do not mistake this truth. Limits will always stand before you. Every dream will be tested. Every step toward growth will meet resistance. Every longing for greatness will walk through fire. But the limit itself is not your enemy. The real question is whether you choose to see it as final or hand it over to God and watch Him clear it from your path. Some of you stopped right before the breakthrough. You reached the wall and decided to rest. You stood before the river and turned away. You faced the storm and ran for shelter. But God never told His people to retreat. He calls His people to press on even when their strength feels small. Even when the road is unclear, even when fear is shouting loud, He commands you to trust that He alone will move the wall, divide the waters, and still the raging storm. And hear this clearly. Sometimes the limit you feel is not outside of you, but inside of you. It is the voice in your mind that says you cannot. It is the whisper in your spirit that says you are not enough. It is the doubt that grows louder every time you try. But God did not place that voice within you. That voice is the echo of fear, not the truth of faith. Replace that voice with the word of God that says, I am with you, I will strengthen you, I will uphold you. Let His truth silence every lie. Let His power drown out every doubt. Let His presence drive away every shadow. There are some who think if God wanted me to rise higher, He would have made it easy. But my friend, God does not shape greatness through ease. He shapes greatness through resistance. Just as the wind shapes the tree, just as the fire refines the gold, just as the storm strengthens the roots, so too does God allow challenges to shape you. The limit is not meant to break you. It is meant to make you stronger. The wall is not there to end your journey. It is there to prove the strength that God has already placed in you. If you would stop seeing limits as barriers and start seeing them as teachers, you would understand that every challenge is a message from God saying there is more in you than you think. Think of the eagle. It does not fear the storm. It uses the storm to rise higher. While other birds hide from the wind, the eagle spreads its wings and lets the very force others fear become the force that carries it upward. That is what God calls you to do. Do not run from the storms of life. Do not hide from the winds of resistance, but spread the wings of your faith and let God lift you above the very things that were meant to keep you down. Some of you think your past disqualifies you. You look at the mistakes you made, the wrong turns you took, the years you wasted, and you say, I am too far gone to rise. But hear me well, your past is not a prison. When God is your Redeemer, what you see as wasted, God sees as preparation. What you see as broken, God sees as ready to be rebuilt. What you see as shame, God transforms into strength. Do not let your past become a chain around your neck. God has already cut it loose. Stop dragging what God has already released. Stop carrying what God has already forgiven. Stop limiting your future with the weight of your yesterday. The storm does not limit the eagle. It elevates it. And in the same way, the storm does not limit you. When you trust in God, it elevates you. I must speak to those who live in silence, those who keep their dreams buried deep because they are afraid of ridicule, afraid of failure, afraid of disappointment. My friends, silence will not protect you. Hiding will not save you. Shrinking will not secure you. You are not safe when you live in fear. You are in prison. The only safety is in the arms of God, and the only freedom is in the courage to live the life He has given you without restraint. Speak the dream, take the step, walk in faith, because when you do, you will find that God is already there, clearing the path, removing the obstacles, tearing down the limits you thought unmovable. Do not settle for a life that is less than what God has placed in you. Settling is another word for surrendering to your limits. Settling is choosing comfort over calling, safety over purpose, fear over faith. And every time you settle, you shrink. But every time you step out in faith, you grow, you rise, you expand. God has not called you to settle. He has called you to soar. Do not dishonor Him by living small when He has given you wings for the sky. Every limit you break through becomes a testimony to someone else. When you rise from the ashes, you show another that it can be done. When you overcome, and as long as you cling to those limits, they will shape your life. But the moment you open your hands and release them into the care of God, you will see that He has been waiting all along to take you higher than you dared to imagine. Do you not understand that God created you with intention? ChatGPT said there are people listening right now who have walked for years with invisible chains around their hearts. You move through your days with a smile on your face, yet inside you are weighed down by belief that your life will never change. You say to yourself, this is just the way it is. This is who I am. This is all I will ever be. But let me tell you the truth. When you believe that, you are not living by the power of God. You are living by the power of your limits. The mountain you inspire another to climb. When you live free, you invite another to step out of their prison. Do not think your victory is only for you. It is for all who will watch and believe, because of what God has done through you. Your life is not meant to be a quiet survival. It is meant to be a shining testimony of what God can do when someone refuses to live by limits. And so let me ask you, what limits have you accepted as truth? What walls have you embraced as permanent? What ceilings have you decided cannot be broken? Bring them before God, lay them at His feet, speak them out, and then let them go. because the moment you place them in his hands, he begins to remove them. And when he removes them, you will find yourself running where you once crawled, soaring where you once stumbled, rejoicing where you once wept. For with God the word limit loses all meaning, and the word impossible becomes nothing more than a lie exposed by truth. Every breath you take is a reminder that your existence is not random. The mind you carry, the talents you hold, the desires that stir in your heart, none of it is meaningless. God planted those seeds within you so that you would bear fruit in this world. But when you say, I cannot, you refuse the very harvest he intended for you. When you limit yourself, you bury the seeds before they ever see the sun. And when you bury them, you rob not only yourself but also those who were meant to be nourished by the fruit of your life. Do not bury what God has planted. Some of you carry the weight of impossibility because you are trying to carry it all by yourself. You measure your strength against the size of the mountain, and you say, I will never climb it. You measure your wisdom against the size of the problem, and you say, I will never solve it. You measure your resources against the size of the dream, and you say, I will never reach it. And yes, if it were only you, you would be right. But it is not only you, it is God through you. Do not silence what God has spoken. Do not diminish what God has designed. Silence is not absence. Sometimes God allows the waiting so that your faith may grow stronger, so that your roots may go deeper, so that when the breakthrough comes, you are ready to sustain it. Do not let waiting convince you that you are limited. God has not changed his mind about you. He has not withdrawn his promise. He has not removed his hand. Trust his timing. For when he moves, the limits that held you for years will fall away in a moment. And when God is with you, the mountain is not too high. The problem is not too complex. The dream is not too far. Do not measure your destiny by your power. Measure it by God's power. There is a reason that people who trust God live differently. They walk into storms with peace. They step into uncertainty with courage. They face challenges with hope. It is not because they are stronger than others, but because they know that God is greater than the storm, greater than the uncertainty, greater than the challenge. They do not deny the presence of struggle. They deny the finality of it. They do not ignore the weight of their burden. They trust God to lift it. And because they refuse to let limits define them, they walk into places others are afraid to go. They do things others said could never be done. They become living testimonies of what happens when a person believes in the limitless power of God. Do not think for one moment that God has forgotten you. Some of you have prayed, and the answer has not yet come. You have waited, and the door has not yet opened. You have believed, and the dream has not yet appeared. And now the temptation comes to say, maybe it was not meant for me. Maybe this is all I will ever have. But hear me, delay is not denial. Waiting is not rejection. Some of the greatest chains people carry are not seen on their hands or feet, but are wrapped around their minds. Chains of doubt, chains of insecurity, chains of shame, chains of fear. And these chains are heavier than any iron, stronger than any steel, more confining than any. Because if your mind is bound, your life will be bound. But if your mind is free, your life will be free. That is why you must renew your thinking, not with your own words, but with the truth of God. Fill your mind with the knowledge that He is your strength, He is your guide, He is your provider. He is your shield. He is your freedom. And the more you meditate on His greatness, the weaker your chains become, until one day they snap and fall to the ground. Let me tell you, the enemy of your destiny is not the size of your obstacle. It is the size of your unbelief. Because the truth is, the obstacle may look great, but God is greater. The mountain may look immovable, but God is unshakable. The storm may roar loud, but God's voice thunders louder still. It is not the obstacle that holds you back. It is your choice to believe it has more power than God. Once you flip that belief, once you declare, "My God is stronger," then you begin to walk in the authority of one who cannot be confined by limits. I want to speak to those who feel unworthy. You say to yourself, "God can bless others but not me. God can use others but not me. God can lift others but not me." That is a lie you have carried too long. Your worth does not come from your perfection. Your worth does not come from your record. Your worth comes from the simple truth that God made you. And if He made you with value. Stop letting your scars disqualify you. Stop letting your past silence you. Stop letting your weakness convince you that you cannot rise. God is not limited by your imperfections. He works through them. He takes what is broken and makes it whole. He takes what is weak and makes it strong. He takes what is ordinary and makes it extraordinary. Rise up and believe that God is greater than your limits. Rise up and trust that He will remove every wall, every chain, every barrier you have placed on yourself. If you are still breathing, then God is not done with you. Every person has a choice. Will you live by what you see, or will you live by what God has promised? If you live only by what you see, you will always be limited. You will see the obstacle and stop. You will see the storm and turn back. You will see the desert and give up. But if you live by what God has promised, then you will move forward even when the path is unclear. You will press on even when the night is long. You will endure even when the weight is heavy. Because you know that God's promise is not bound by what you see. And those who live by His promise, not by their sight, are the ones who break through the limits and become living proof that nothing is impossible with Him. And so I declare to you, rise up. Do not let another day go by with chains around your soul. Do not let another sunrise meet you while you are still living small. Do not let another night fall with your dreams buried in the ground. He is the one who can remove every limit you have placed upon your own soul. Because the truth is the only thing standing between you and the life God intended, is the belief that you cannot replace that with the truth, that through Him you can and you will see a life beyond limits unfold before your very eyes. There is a moment in every human heart when doubt begins to whisper, when fear begins to creep in, and when the voice of limitation seems louder than the voice of hope. But I tell you, with all the authority of truth, God did not create you to live under the weight of chains you built yourself. He did not breathe His life into you only for you to surrender to the bars of self-doubt, fear, and hesitation. Rise up and walk into the wide open freedom He has prepared for you. You are speaking from the language of human weakness, not the language of divine strength. And when you cling to those words long enough, they become chains, but God, in His mercy, breaks the very locks you put on the doors of your own destiny. He does not wait for your permission to be God. He only waits for your faith to align with his greatness. For where your strength ends, his power begins. What you see as a wall, he sees as dust that can be blown away with a single word. What you call impossible, God calls small. Every time you tell yourself, I cannot, you are not describing the reality of God's power, but only the frailty of your own vision. And when you allow him to take control, the walls you thought were too high begin to crumble. The oceans you thought were too wide begin to part. And the ceilings you thought were fixed begin to shatter. There are countless lives today that live in quiet defeat, not because God has withheld his blessings, but because they have believed the lies of limitation. But I say to you, when God has written your story, no failure defines it, no critic can erase it, and no fear can silence it. The same God who stretched out the heavens and set the stars in place has never once needed permission from your doubts to make you victorious. Think about the power of the human mind when surrendered to God. A single idea gifted by him can build nations, can heal generations, can turn weakness into strength. Yet, how often do we bury those God-given ideas beneath the soil of hesitation? How often do we silence the very calling that could change everything because we fear the size of the mountain? But hear me clearly. The mountain was never meant to intimidate you. It was meant to reveal the power of God to move it. The barrier was never meant to end your journey. It was meant to showcase that his hand can lift you above it. When God is for you, even your mistakes cannot keep you down. Even your past cannot chain you. Even your own weakness cannot destroy you. For what you call weakness, he calls opportunity. What you call broken, he calls ready for his touch. What you call a limit, he calls a platform for his glory. Every limit you accept is an insult to the one who knows no bounds. Every ceiling you build is a shadow compared to his endless sky. And every excuse you make is powerless against his eternal decree. Do not underestimate what God has put inside you. The very breath you carry is not your own. It is his gift. And if he has given it, then he has also given purpose. That means you are not wandering without direction. Even if your eyes cannot yet see the path, the limits you see are temporary. They measure their future by their past failures. They judge their worth by the opinions of others. They shrink their dreams down to the size of their fears. The strength he gives is eternal. The storm you face is passing. The victory he promises is forever. I must warn you, if you live your life only by what your eyes can see, you will never rise above the limits of this world. But if you choose to live by what God has spoken, you will walk on waters that others sink in. You will climb mountains that others surrender to, and you will see possibilities where others see only impossibilities. Lift your gaze toward him and see how he breaks every ceiling, tears down every wall, unshackles every chain, and shatters every limit you once believed. For God does not speak in terms of limits. He speaks in terms of abundance, power, and victory. When you walk out of here, I want you to remember this truth with every beat of your heart. God has never designed you to be small, defeated, or chained by the walls you've built for yourself. He has called you higher. He has destined you for more. Every voice of doubt, every whisper of fear, every chain of limitation is nothing in the presence of his power. And when you trust him, when you step forward in faith, when you refuse to bow to the prison of your own mind, you will see the mighty hand of God tear down those walls and open doors you never thought could open. Do not walk away carrying the same boundaries that held you when you arrived. Leave them behind. Release them. Allow God to reveal what unfolds when faith outweighs fear. When obedience rises above hesitation, when trust stands taller than doubt, He will lift you out of the valley and set your feet upon higher ground. He will take your shattered pieces and shape them into power. He will expand your vision beyond what your mind could ever conceive. The world may label you bound, but God calls you free. The world may see weakness, but God declares strength. The world may assume your story has ended, but God says it has only just begun. For with God there are no boundaries, no barriers, no impossibilities, only victory. My friend, listen closely to me right now, because what I'm about to tell you is not a suggestion, not a theory, not a mere hope. It is a declaration backed by the full authority of God's Word. You may be surrounded by challenges. You may feel trapped by your situation. You may think the pressure is closing in, but God is already creating a way out. You do not have to live in fear. You do not have to drown in anxiety. You do not have to lose another night's sleep. Because while you are worrying, God is working. While you are stressing, God is unlocking doors you haven't even seen yet. While you are weeping, God is setting the stage for a breakthrough no one can hinder. So stop stressing, because the hand of God is already in motion over your life. I know how heavy life can feel. I know the weight of burdens that press down so hard it feels like your very chest cannot rise. You may be asking, when will this end? How will I get out? Where is the answer? And yet the truth you must cling to is this: God never leaves His people without a way of escape. God is not blind to your pain, nor deaf to your cries. He is not distant, not uncaring, not idle. Even when you cannot trace His steps, you can trust His heart. God is ahead of you, making crooked places straight, preparing rivers in the desert and carving highways through the wilderness. You see only the problem before your eyes, but God sees the outcome. You see the storm, but God sees the rainbow. You see the prison, but God has already planned a release. Stress comes from the illusion that you must solve everything yourself, that you must carry it all on your shoulders, that the outcome depends on your effort alone. But God says, cast your burdens on me, for I will still sustain you. Do you hear that? God is saying, I am enough. I am your deliverer. I am your strength. I am your way out. Worry does not open doors. Prayer does. Anxiety does not solve problems. Surrender does. Fear does not change outcomes. Faith does. So stop tormenting yourself with the endless what-ifs. Stop rehearsing in your mind every possible disaster. Stop living as though God has abandoned you. God has not abandoned you. He is already making a way. Think of how many times in your past you thought it was over and thought you would not make it, thought there was no solution, but you are still here. The battle is not yours. It belongs to God. The storm is not greater than the one who commands the winds. The darkness is not stronger than the light of God's presence. Even now, when you think nothing is happening, God is orchestrating the details, shifting the circumstances, aligning the right people, and dismantling the wrong ones. Your deliverance is already in progress. Why? Because God made a way then, and God is making a way now. He did not bring you this far to leave you stranded. He did not allow you to endure this long just to watch you collapse. He has been faithful yesterday. He is faithful today, and He will be faithful tomorrow. Stress is an insult to the faithfulness of God, for it whispers God cannot handle this. But faith shouts back, God already has the answer. Stop letting your mind run wild with doubt. Some of you feel like you are drowning under the pressure. Bills are mounting, relationships are breaking, health is failing, and peace feels like a distant memory. You wake up tired. You go to bed restless, and the weight never seems to lift. But listen, your stress cannot change what only God can do. God does not need your worry to accomplish His will. He does not need your sleepless nights, your trembling hands, or your racing heart. What He needs is your trust. What He desires is your faith. What He commands is your surrender. Stress is evidence of misplaced trust. Faith is evidence of surrender to God's power. You may be saying, but I can't see the way out. You don't need to see it. God sees it. You may say, I don't know when this will change. You don't need to know when. God has already appointed the time. You may say, I don't know how this will work. You don't need to know how. God has already determined the method. You don't need to figure out the plan, because the plan belongs to God and His plan is perfect, is unstoppable. Life is pushing upward. And then suddenly at the appointed time, the green shoot bursts forth. That's what God is doing in your life, beneath the surface, in ways you cannot see. He is moving, preparing, shaping, and setting the stage for a breakthrough that will astound you. Stop digging up the soil every day to check on it. Stop stressing about what you cannot see. Trust that God is at work in the invisible realm, bringing forth visible results at the right time. And when that breakthrough comes, you will see that all your stress was wasted energy. You will see that none of your sleepless nights added a single blessing to your life. You will see that the tears you cried in doubt did not open doors. Only God did. God is already doing what you could never do on your own. So why stress over what is already guaranteed by His power? The enemy wants you to live in fear. He wants you to live in panic. He wants you to live in a constant state of unrest, because a restless mind cannot hear God clearly. But God calls you into peace. God calls you into stillness. When God calls you into trust, when you quiet the storm inside, you will hear His voice guiding you through the storm outside. His plan is already unfolding. Think about it. When a seed is planted in the ground, you don't see anything happening for a long while. The soil looks empty, lifeless, barren. But beneath the surface, something powerful is taking place. Roots are growing. The seed is breaking. He says, be still and know that I am God. That stillness is not weakness. It is power. It is the power of faith that says, I will not stress because my God is in control. Let me tell you, stress is a thief. It robs you of today's peace while solving none of tomorrow's problems. It steals your joy, your focus, your energy, and your ability to recognize God's hand at work. It blinds you to the blessings you already have while magnifying problems that God has already. Stress shrinks your faith and magnifies your fear. But when you stop stressing, when you choose trust instead, you magnify God above your problems. And when God is magnified, problems lose their power. There is no chain so strong that God cannot break it. There is no wall so high that God cannot bring it down. Sometimes the silence is your training ground. God is not only concerned with your destination, He is concerned with who you are becoming along the way. And if He must let you walk through pressure to make you stronger, if He must let you sit in waiting to sharpen your faith, then that is still His goodness at work. Stop stressing about the process. The process is necessary. The delay is not denial. The silence is not abandonment. There is no situation so complex that God cannot untangle it. And there is no night so dark that God cannot light the way through it. You may feel like you are hemmed in on every side, but God specializes in parting seas, in making rivers in the desert, in carving highways through the wilderness. You may think you're standing before a dead end, but God is already preparing the Red Sea to split before you. I know some of you are asking, if God is making a way, why can't I see it now? Because sometimes God hides his work until the appointed time. Sometimes the delay is your preparation. Sometimes the waiting is your strengthening. The waiting is not wasted. Every step is ordered by God, and he wastes nothing in your life. He will use the tears. He will use the struggle. He will use the pain. He will use the waiting, and he will weave it all into a tapestry of glory. You may only see the tangled threads right now, but one day you will look back and see the masterpiece God was creating all along. The same God who brought you out before will bring you out again. The same God who opened doors before will open doors again. The same God who provided before will provide again. And he will do it in ways greater than you can ask or imagine. And I declare to you right now, this is not the end of your story. This is not your final chapter. God is not finished with you. Stop stressing, because the author of your story has already written the next page. My friend, if you could only see what God is already doing, your stress would melt away like snow in the sunlight. If you could only glimpse the doors he is unlocking, the enemies he is scattering, the opportunities he is aligning, the blessings he is preparing, you would fall on your knees in gratitude instead of lying awake in worry. God is faithful, and he is making a way out of this right now. Stop stressing. Trust him. Let me tell you something that will set you free today. The weight you are carrying was never meant for your shoulders. You were not created to live in constant panic, clutching the reins of life as if everything depends on you. You were created to walk in trust, to move in faith, and to rest in the assurance that God is already ahead of you, arranging your deliverance before you even realize you need it. Stress is the false belief that you are alone. Faith is the true conviction that God is already working on your behalf. Stress only blinds you to the truth that even in the fire, you are being refined. And right now, I declare to you, God is already making a way out of this. So stop stressing. Every trial you face is not a sign of abandonment, but an invitation to greater trust. Do you understand that what looks like a closed door is often the place where God is about to show you his power? What feels like the heaviest burden is often the very situation through which God will reveal his strength in you. You see, God does not waste pressure. He does not waste pain. He does not waste obstacles. Every challenge is raw material in his hands. Even in the wilderness, you are being shaped. Even in the storm, you are being strengthened. God is not preparing your destruction. He is preparing your elevation. You think this difficulty is to harm you, but God intends to use it to build you. That setback you are crying over may be the very thing that launches you into your destiny. That rejection you are mourning may be the very redirection toward God's perfect plan. And that delay you are questioning may be the divine timing that prevents you from walking into something that would have destroyed you. Do not stress over what God is using to protect you. Do not panic over what God is using to position you. If only you could see behind the curtain of the visible, you would realize that this situation is not breaking you. It is making you. Stress thrives in the absence of perspective. It magnifies the temporary and blinds you to the eternal. But when you shift your vision from the problem to the one who rules over all problems, your heart begins to settle. Stress says this is impossible. Faith says with God all things are possible. Stress says I don't see a way. God is the way. Stress says I can't take this anymore. Faith says God will carry me through. Do you see the difference? Stress pulls you down, but faith lifts you up. Stress drains your life, but faith revives your soul. The fact that you cannot see the way does not mean there is no way. It means God is teaching you to trust Him. So stop stressing about tomorrow. God is already in tomorrow. Stop stressing about the outcome. God has already secured the outcome. Stop stressing about the outcome. Your part is not to worry. Your part is to believe. Your part is not to panic. Your part is to pray. Your part is not to collapse in fear. Your part is to stand firm in faith. Let God be God, and you will see doors open that no man can shut. Some of you have been living in cycles of worry for so long that you don't even know how to live without it. You wake up with worry. You carry it through the day. You lie down with it at night. But I am telling you now, God never intended for worry to be your companion. His presence was meant to be your companion. His peace was meant to walk with you. Stress makes you see only the storm. But faith makes you see the hand of God above the storm. And here is the truth many forget. God's way is often hidden until the very moment you need it. He does not show you every step in advance. He does not reveal every detail of the plan. Why? Because if He showed you the whole path, you would not need faith. God wants you to lean not on your own understanding, but to trust in Him with all your heart. He wants you to walk step by step, moment by moment, relying not on your sight, but on His promise. Stress will wear you out, but surrender will lift you up. Think about the eagle. The eagle does not waste energy flapping endlessly in the storm. It spreads its wings and lets the wind carry it higher. His guidance was meant to steady you. The reason you feel so tired is not because the burden is too big. It's because you've been trying to carry what belongs to God. His word is final. His power is absolute. His plan is unstoppable. In the same way, you must learn to spread the wings of faith and let the winds of God's Spirit lift you above the storm. Stress keeps you flapping, panicking, exhausting yourself. But faith allows you to soar, to rest in the assurance that God's strength is greater than your struggle. Do not confuse motion with progress. You can run in circles of stress and never move forward an inch. You can worry, plan, calculate, overthink, and still remain stuck where you started. But when you trust God, when you release control, when you surrender the outcome into His hands, suddenly things begin to shift. Suddenly doors swing open. Suddenly burdens are lifted. Suddenly peace floods your heart. That is the difference between a life of stress and a life of faith. And hear me well. God is not just making a way out. He is making a better way out. He doesn't simply want to deliver you from trouble. He wants to deliver you into purpose. He doesn't just want to rescue you. He wants to restore you. He doesn't just want to remove the problem. He wants to transform you through it. That is why you must stop stressing, because God's plan is bigger than the problem. His plan is greater than the opposition. His plan is deeper than your fears, and His plan will prevail. Every single thing that is against you right now is already subject to God's authority. Your enemies may think they have power, but God holds all power. Your obstacles may look immovable, but God is the one who moves mountains. Your situation may appear hopeless, but God is the God of hope. And when God says, "I am making a way," no devil in hell, no scheme of man, no obstacle in life can stop Him. Do you realize that stress is often the voice of unbelief, whispering, "What if God does not come through?" But faith is the voice of certainty, declaring God has already come through. Stress binds you to fear, but faith anchors you to truth. You see, the problem with stress is that it magnifies the storm, but shrinks the greatness of God in your mind. Yet the storm is never bigger than God. The problem is never stronger than His power. The darkness is never thicker than His light. God is already working, even when your eyes cannot perceive it, even when your heart struggles to believe it. When you wake up in the morning, the enemy wants the first thing on your mind to be your problems. But God wants the first thing on your mind to be His promises. Stress tells you to begin your day worrying about what you cannot control. Faith tells you to begin your day trusting in the one who controls everything. Stress keeps you checking your bank account, your circumstances for security. Faith keeps you lifting your eyes to the heavens, because that is where your help comes from. God has never failed in His word. He has never broken a promise. He has never abandoned those who place their trust in Him. Why then should you allow stress to rule your heart when the throne of God is still occupied? Hear me well. God is not pacing the floors of heaven, wringing His hands, wondering how to solve your problem. He already has the answer. He is not scrambling to figure out how to rescue you. He has already prepared the way. He is not surprised by what you are facing. Long before you stepped into this trial, He had already written your escape. And not just any escape, but the perfect one. The one that will bring peace to your soul. The one that will silence your enemies. The one that will reveal His glory in your life. Stress also tricks you into thinking that God's silence is God's absence and all. But silence does not mean absence. Silence is often preparation. Silence is where faith is tested and trust is forged. Silence is where God works in the hidden spaces, aligning what must be aligned, shifting what must be shifted, moving what must be moved. Just because you don't hear Him does not mean He is not speaking. Just because you don't see His hand does not mean He is not moving. The hidden work of God is often the greatest proof of His power. Stop asking yourself, "What if this doesn't work out?" and start declaring, God is already making it work out. Stop imagining every worst-case scenario and start believing in God's best-case outcome. Stop torturing yourself with visions of failure and start strengthening yourself with visions of God's faithfulness. Stress is imagination in the wrong direction. Faith is imagination aligned with the promises of God. You get to choose which one you feed. If you keep feeding your stress, it will grow and consume you. But if you feed your faith, it will silence every fear, every doubt, every worry, and you will begin to walk in the peace that surpasses understanding. Sometimes God allows you to face circumstances beyond your strength, so you will finally realize your strength was never enough. Stress convinces you that you must carry everything alone. But God reminds you that you were never meant to. You are not abandoned in the struggle. You are being invited into deeper trust. You are not forgotten in the storm. You are being taught to hear God's voice in the thunder. You are not lost in the wilderness. You are being guided by a pillar of God's presence, even when you cannot see the path clearly. Do not mistake stress for responsibility. Responsibility means doing what is yours to do. Stress happens when you start trying to do what only God can do. Your part is to pray, to act with wisdom, to trust, and to wait. God's part is to open the doors, to bring the breakthrough, to provide, and to part the seas. When you try to carry both your load and God's, the weight will crush you. But when you place His part back into His hands, strength, peace, and clarity return. Remember this: God's way out doesn't just pull you through, it lifts you higher. His goal is not simply to end the trial. His goal is to transform you within it. When God brings you out, you will not be the same. You will emerge wiser, stronger, purer, and more rooted in His presence. Stress focuses on survival, but God focuses on your revival. Stress says, I just want to get out. God says, I am bringing you out greater than you went in. Think about the river. When obstacles are placed in its path, the river does not stop flowing. Stress says, look at what's against me. Faith says, look at who is for me. And sometimes, my friend, the greatest act of faith is to rest. Rest is not laziness. Rest is trust. Rest says, I refuse to let stress dictate my life, because I know God is in control. Rest is proof that you believe God is already at work. Rest is the silence that declares louder than words, my God will make a way. When you learn to rest in Him, even in the storm, even in the fire, even in the valley, you will see that His presence is enough. So stop rehearsing your fears. Stop feeding your doubts. Stop magnifying your stress. Instead, magnify God. Speak His promises over your life. Remind yourself of His faithfulness in the past. Declare His power in the present. He is the living stream that will never be stopped. The obstacles in your path may seem immovable, but God will carve a way through. Stress looks at the rock and says, I cannot get past this. Faith looks at the same rock and says, God will make a passage through this. Let me remind you, God is not intimidated by deadlines, by reports, by threats, by diagnosis, by shortages, by enemies. He holds time in His hand. He holds provision in His hand. He holds healing in His hand. He holds victory in His hand. Nothing is outside His authority. And if He has already declared that He is making a way, then no force on earth or in the unseen can stand against it. It bends. It carves. It finds a way around. It keeps moving until it reaches its destination. That is what God is doing in your life. Proclaim His victory over your future. Stress cannot remain where faith is alive, and faith cannot die where God is trusted. God is already making a way out of this. So stop stressing and start believing. Listen closely, because what I am about to tell you is not just encouragement. It is a lifeline for your spirit. Stress is not just an emotional reaction. It is a spiritual weight that tries to choke the life out of you. It whispers, you are alone. There is no way out. But faith rises up and answers, God has already made a way. I am not abandoned. I am not defeated. I am not trapped. My God is working right now. And when faith speaks louder than stress, chains begin to break, doors begin to open, and peace begins to flood your soul. You must understand that stress is not only dangerous to your mind, but it also poisons your body, weakens your heart, and blinds your vision. That is why the enemy loves stress, because it makes you too weak to pray, too tired to hope, too distracted to see what God is already doing. But when you shift your focus back to God, stress begins to lose its grip. God never intended for you to live bent under the weight of fear. He intended for you to live free, walking in His assurance, moving in His strength, and trusting His plan. Stop telling yourself that you are failing. You feel overwhelmed. You are not failing. You are being positioned. You are being brought to the very place where you must depend on God completely. And dependence on God is not weakness. And here's a truth you must hold on to. Sometimes God allows the pressure to increase so that you will finally release it to Him. As long as you think you can handle everything on your own, you will keep carrying the weight. But when the burden gets too heavy, when the storm gets too fierce, when the problem gets too great, that is when you finally drop to your knees and cry out, God, I cannot carry this anymore. And it is in that moment when you surrender that you feel His hand lift the burden, His peace cover your heart, and His power make the impossible possible. It is the very source of your strength. When you lean on your own strength, you collapse. When you lean on God, you rise. Stress says, I am not enough. Faith says, God is more than enough. And remember this, what looks like a setback is often a setup. The closed door you are stressing over may be the very thing protecting you from disaster. The delay you are fighting against may be the divine pause, saving you from walking into the wrong situation. You are not stuck. You are growing roots that will one day bear fruit. The unanswered prayer may not be silence at all. It may be God's greater answer, one that will be revealed at the perfect time. Stress says this is the end. Faith says this is preparation. Stress says I am losing everything. Faith says God is aligning everything. You see, God is not only making a way out, He is making a way forward. He is not only rescuing you from this problem, He is leading you into greater blessing. He is not only delivering you from danger, He is directing you toward. Stress keeps your eyes locked on the obstacle. Faith lifts your eyes to see the horizon of God's promise. And if you would only lift your head, you would realize that your future is bigger than your present, that your destiny is greater than your difficulty, and that your God is greater than your fear. Think of the seed in the soil. It is pressed down, buried, surrounded by darkness. If seeds could think, perhaps they would panic, wondering, why am I trapped here? Why is everything pressing against me? Why can't I see the light? But what the seed does not realize is that the pressure, the soil, and the darkness are the very conditions for its growth. Without them, it could never break forth. And in the same way, the darkness you feel, the pressure you face, the weight you carry, they are not meant to bury you, but to plant you. You are not being destroyed. You are being developed. You are not being suffocated. You are being strengthened. Stop stressing about the darkness. Stop worrying about the pressure. Stop panicking about the soil. Trust the God who planted you, because the same God who planted you will bring you forth in his time. He did not bury you to kill you. He planted you to raise you. The way out is already being formed beneath the surface. And let me tell you something powerful. God's deliverance is never late. It may not come according to your timetable, but it will come at the exact moment it is meant to. Stress says it is too late for me. Faith says God holds time in his hand. Stress says it is over. Faith says God is never late, and his timing is always. The very moment you think you cannot take another step is often the very moment God steps in and makes the way clear. Some of you are so used to fighting, struggling, and stressing that you don't even realize God is calling you to rest. Do not underestimate what happens when you choose to trust instead of stress. Rest is not the absence of problems. Rest is the presence of trust. You can be surrounded by storms and still be at peace because you know God is steering the ship. You can walk through the fire and still remain because you know God is shielding you. You can stand in the valley and still be strong because you know God is lifting you. Stress says everything depends on me. Faith says everything rests in God's hands. When you release your fear, God releases his peace. When you surrender your control, God releases his power. When you lay down your burden, God lifts you higher. This is why the command is always the same. Trust in God, not in yourself, not in people, not in circumstances. Trust in God because people will fail. Sometimes God's way out does not look like the way you imagined. You may think the only solution is for the storm to stop, but God may choose to strengthen you to walk through it. You may think the only answer is for the obstacle to be removed, but God may choose to turn the obstacle into your stepping stone. You may think the only resolution is for the problem to disappear, but God may choose to transform the problem into the very thing that propels you into blessing. Stop stressing when God's way looks different from yours, because his way is higher, wiser, and better than anything you could imagine. So I tell you again, stop stressing. God is already making a way out of this. While you are worrying about tomorrow, God is already in tomorrow preparing what you need. While you are panicking about the outcome, God has already written the outcome. While you are losing sleep, God never sleeps, and he is working for your good. Trust him. Surrender to him. Rest in him, because the God who has carried you this far will carry you through this too. Circumstances will shift. Your own strength will falter, but God remains unchanging, unshakable, and unstoppable. And here is a mystery you must embrace. There is something I want you to hear deep within your heart. God has already seen the tears you cried when no one was watching. God has already heard the silent prayers that never left your lips. And God has already measured the weight of the burden you carry. And let me tell you, with every ounce of boldness within me, God has not forgotten you. He is not blind to your struggle. He is not deaf to your cry. And he is not powerless to act. Even now, God is making a way out. Stress will not change your situation, but trusting God will. Worry will not open a door, but faith will. Fear will not lift your soul, but the assurance of God's power will carry you higher than your circumstances. When you worry, you are giving more attention to the problem than the one who has the power to solve it. When you stress, you are putting faith in the store instead of the one who commands the storm to be still. And I declare to you, God is not intimidated by the weight of your burden. God is not overwhelmed by the size of your enemy. God is not shaken by the obstacles standing in your way. If he could part the sea for his people when there was no bridge, if he could bring water from a rock in the middle of a desert, if he could bring light into the darkest corners of existence, then he can bring you out of this season you are in. He does not need your help to perform a miracle. He does not require your wisdom to make a way. All he asks of you is to trust him, to rest in his power, and to release your grip on fear. The truth is, many of us are imprisoned not by the chains of our circumstances, but by the chains of our thoughts. It is the prison of worry, the cage of fear, the chains of stress that hold us back more than the reality of the problem itself. But God is the one who breaks chains. Even when your eyes cannot see it, even when your heart feels faint, even when your strength is nearly gone, the hand of God is moving behind the scenes of your life. That is why you must stop stressing. God is the one who opens prison doors. God is the one who brings freedom where there was bondage. And if you will allow him, he will lift that weight off your shoulders. He will release you from that fear, and he will open a path you did not even know existed. Why would you let your peace be stolen by something that God has already settled in his plan? The birds of the air are not stressing about their food, yet God feeds them. The flowers of the field do not toil or spin in worry, yet God clothes them in beauty. And if God cares for the smallest details of creation, how much more does he care for you? Your stress is declaring that the problem is bigger than the one who governs the universe. And I tell you now with fire in my soul, nothing is greater than God. No mountain is higher, no valley deeper, no giant stronger, no darkness thicker. God stands above it all. And when he speaks, creation bends to his will. Listen to me. Stress robs you of today by borrowing from a tomorrow that God already holds in his hands. That is why you must stop stressing, because your stress is an insult to the power of God. Stress makes you restless, but God brings rest. Stress weakens your heart, but God strengthens your soul. Stress blinds your vision, but God opens your eyes to possibilities you never considered. Some of you are living as though the weight of the world is on your shoulders, but it was never meant to be. You are not God. You are not the one holding the universe together. You are not the one who commands the stars to shine or the oceans to stay within their boundaries. That is the work of God, and he does it perfectly without your stress. The same God who holds galaxies in place is the same God who holds you in his hand. Do you think he will drop you? Do you think he will forget you? Do you think he will fail you? No, my friend. God is faithful. He cannot deny his nature. And his nature is to be your refuge, your provider, your deliverer. This is the truth you must hold until the end. You who are created in his image, you who are carried in his hand, you who are watched by his eye, every moment of your life, God has already made provision for you. He has already mapped out your escape, already planned your breakthrough, already written the ending to this trial. You are simply walking through the pages of his divine story. You may think the walls around you are too strong, but God is already shaking them. You may believe the chains are too heavy, but God is already breaking them. You may feel the night is too long, but God is already sending the dawn. Do not measure your life by what your eyes see in this moment. Look with the eyes of faith and see the hand of God moving. Look with the vision of the Spirit and recognize that God is not waiting until tomorrow to act. He is working right now. That is why you can stop stressing. God is already ahead of you. Before you walked into this season, he had already prepared the way out. The struggle was never meant to be yours alone. It belongs to God. Before the storm began, he had already determined its end. You are walking through what God has already conquered. You are passing through waters that cannot drown you, climbing mountains that cannot defeat you, fighting battles that cannot destroy you. Because God is with you and God is for you. That is why worrying serves no purpose.